Hey, I got a confession.
Welcome to the Indie Author Method, where we share insights from authors for you on your writing journey. On the weekends, when you have more time and space in your day, we sit down with another author to discuss their processes and what they can share with you. This episode is brought to you by Monk Manual. Monk Manual at its core is a 90-day productivity system, but it's much more than that. Monk Manual as a company is on a mission to fix modern productivity to help people live fuller lives. Inspired by the wisdom of monks and rooted in psychology, they designed practical tools for peaceful being and purposeful doing. They were so gracious to partner with the Indie Author Method, and you can check out their products, including the 90-day planner that I personally use, at their website, monkmanual.com. Be sure to use promo code Andrew J. Brandt at checkout for 15% off your order. That's promo code Andrew J. Brandt, all one word, at monkmanual.com. Now on to the interview. Today, I'm so excited to be joined by my friend Taylor Moore. He's the Barry Award-winning author of a series of neo-Western novels featuring CIA agent Garrett Kohl. Ricochet is the newest, came out last week. I've had the opportunity to talk with Taylor several times, usually at a Starbucks, and I finally goaded him into coming onto the show. Taylor, how are you?
I'm doing great, Andrew. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. I am elbow deep into Ricochet. I got it at your signing at Burrowing Owl Books in Amarillo, Texas last week. How's the book release been? How's it treating you?
Yeah, so far so good. I think people don't realize how exhausting the press of marketing and publicity is for these things. And I had no clue when I first started this process 2 books ago with Downrange. But yeah, it's a crazy and wild week. And for me personally, I always have my next book in the series is always due when that one comes out. So I've got the pressure of deadlines. I got the pressure of getting out there and marketing and selling and hitting the road and doing the book tour stuff. So it's a busy time.
I don't like to admit it, but I do not enjoy that part of this process. Being an author is a very solitary experience. All right, you just sit down with your ideas and your notes, and you write. Or being a writer is solitary. Being an author is a very external thing, right? You go talk to people, you sign books, you go to conferences and festivals and book signings. And whenever I get to the end of a book, whenever I start planning that part of it, I get a little shaky, man.
Yeah, it's I think people don't really realize how much goes into that part of it. And it's just part of it. You said there's the writer part and then there's the author part, and that's part of being an author is getting out there and selling. And for me, I'm personally I'm fairly outgoing. I'm fine, being out in public, but at the same time, yeah, you do get in your little comfort zone as a writer, and to put yourself out there again, and you're just using different skills, and sometimes you don't use those skills as much as a writer. But yeah, when that week or 2 weeks rolls around, when you're out there selling your book, it can get kind of crazy.
Last year, I was on a kind of a 3-week book tour for Picture Unavailable, and I was getting kind of burnt out just after 3 weeks. And I had a conversation with a friend who's involved with a pretty successful Christian rock band, and they're on tour 200 days out of the year. He's like, man, like you go to these places and you have to be on. Like, this is the only interaction that these people might have with you, and they love the product, they love your book, and they want to talk to you about it. And so you owe it to them to be on.
Yeah, there's definitely some truth to that, because people, when you do a signing, you never know. People a lot of times will drive a long way just to meet you and shake your hand and get a book signed. And so, yeah, you want to be personable and you want to be gregarious and you want to be all those things that they were hoping you would be. And so that's a big part of it. But it can be stressful. For my first book, I remember I was going through this process, which was all new to me.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, it was, I think we discussed a while back, some of the film side of things. So I had Hollywood studios calling, and I had the next book was due, and I was doing all the publicity and marketing, and it literally was probably the most stressful time I have ever had in my life. I mean, I finally understood, and we've all seen, some interview with an actor or something. They're like, you don't understand what it's like. And I used to think, oh, how horrible, you're an actor and you got to go do these publicity events. Poor you. But I finally understood to a degree what they meant, because yeah, there are times when you're just exhausted and you feel like I can't do this anymore. And there's points for me whenever I do this so long, I'll start losing my voice. And I'm
Mhm.
doing podcasts, I'm doing interviews, I'm doing all these things. I'll start losing my voice, and I can't. You just can't lose your voice. You gotta just put a big
Yep.
smile on your face and just be just as happy as you were 3 weeks ago when it started. At the end of that 3 weeks, and so
Yeah.
it can be a lot of pressure.
Let's get into Ricochet. Like I said in the intro, this is the third book in your Garrett Kohl series. Um, I love this. I live in the Texas Panhandle. I love this neo-Western movement that's happening. How did you come up with the idea for Ricochet, the third book in this series?
So the third book, I think, there was sort of a natural progression as Garrett Cole, my protagonist, comes back from the panhandle, or comes back to the panhandle from having been gone many years, traveling the world, fighting as a Green Beret or working in government service. He's been around the world, and then he comes back. And not to give too much away for people who want to read the books, but the first book starts with the cartels, which is a very natural fit for Texas. Here we are on the
Yep.
border, and we do have issues with the cartels here, and then it progresses. So number three in line, Ricochet, is all about Pantex, which, as you know, living in the Panhandle is a real place. And I think most people that are reading this around the country or around the world are thinking, I invented this nuclear weapons facility that's out in the middle of nowhere here in the Texas Panhandle, but it's
Nope.
absolutely positively, it's a real place, and it allows for some intrigue, some international intrigue into Texas. And so it was just a natural progression. But as you mentioned, it's a neo-Western, and in each of my books, I try to pull something from the old Wild West and put it in my stories. And so as part of our history here, with Pantex and the nuclear weapons facility, we had the White Train. And I was just fascinated to no end. So for people that don't know, there was this, what they called it, the White Train, from the 50s to the 1980s. All the nuclear weapons that were coming to and from Pantex were on this armored train. It was
Yeah.
painted white. It was just like the old Wild West when you'd see them hauling gold or something, and the old train robbery movies. So you had these like gun turrets and this fortified sort of steel caged, like train car,
Yeah.
essentially, and guys with the machine guns and former special operations guys and all that. So for me, I thought, what better way to start, to get into book three is to take that white train concept, and again, a little bit of the old West, the old Butch Cassidy and Sundance, and modernize that. And I thought, well, what would that look like if Garrett, something happened, if nuclear weapons were hijacked, and Garrett had to get onto that
Yeah.
train, what would that look like? And so I just took a little bit of the old and mixed it with the new, and came up with a really fun concept, I think, for a third novel.
I'm always a sucker for a good heist story. The It's called The Town now, but Chuck Hogan's Prince of Thieves is probably my favorite book. It's about bank robbing.
Yeah.
So the old West version of that is, of course, train robbing, and to see you modernize that and bring it into modern day, and like the implications of something like that, of a nuclear weapons train robbery. Just, oh man, it's incredibly thrilling.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you saying that, and it's fun for me as the writer because for people that follow the series know that Garrett is trying to get out of this world. He's trying to get away from danger and just have a
But that
normal
would that
life.
would put you out of a job.
It puts me out of a job. So unfortunately for him, he will always face some sort of crisis. That's just how it's going to be. Sorry, Garrett. But this was a fun one, and as you mentioned, the ramifications of not doing something about hijacked nuclear weapons in your backyard is, you can't turn a blind eye. You can't say that's someone else's problem. It's your problem, no matter how you look at
Yep.
it. So, again, it was a good way for me to sort of, I guess, draw Garrett back into the fight, even though he's been trying to get out of it.
Sure. I grew up on a steady diet of R.L. Stine and Stephen King. I Whenever I read your books, I see a lot of Clancy. I see a lot of the guy that wrote the Bourne series, Robert
Ludlum, yeah.
Ludlum.
Hmm.
Yeah. Who were some of your literary influences, and how have they kind of impacted your writing style?
Yeah, the Ludlum and Clancy, of course. Nelson DeMille was a big one for me, and it was a real honor this year. Or I guess last year, I got to go out and kind of do what you're doing with me and interview Nelson DeMille out of the Poison Pen. and
Oh,
we got
cool.
to go out to dinner, and it was just amazing to just sit and have dinner with one of my heroes growing up. And so he blurbed Ricochet, which was of course an honor, but he was a big one. And how that started was, I was asked when I did my own interview at the Poison Pen, what was the sort of the book or the author, and I said, hands down, I said it was Nilsen DeMille's The Charm School that made me a fan of thrillers. I said that was just the perfect novel for me. And so guys like that could really, they just knew how to do it and were just
Yeah.
experts. And I always say I'll always be chasing that high that I got from reading that book and trying to write the next Nilsen DeMille novel or Tom Clancy or Robert Ludlum. And so it's a good and worthy goal, I think.
Yeah. What's your writing process like? Do you have any like particular rituals or habits, or whenever you sit down to start a book, or whenever you're 30, 40,000 words knee deep into it, what does it look like for you?
The ritual is that it changes all the time. That's the ritual. And I couldn't believe that. And I called recently, I called a friend of mine, Don Bentley, who does the Tom Clancy series, and he just recently took over Vince Flynn's series. And so he's a little ahead of me in the process. He was a debut author the year before I was. And I said, man, I said, I've kind of changed some things. Cause I used to write, as I would write, I would write a book in sequence, like chapter by chapter, as a reader would read it. And then all of a sudden, I changed my process and I started writing storylines. But I would do it, I have 4 parts per book. So for
Mhm.
each part, I would write that particular storyline because I
Okay.
felt like I was getting out of the moment too many times.
Sure.
And now that seems very natural. And I don't know how I did it the other way, but as I do, and that's for book 4. So for book 5, it'll probably be something totally different. But it changes.
Yeah.
I typically try to get out of my office to write. Like I like to write, and
Okay.
whether it's what you see me at Starbucks, I'll be at a coffee house somewhere. Editing, I typically do that in my computer, or at home by my office. I like my big screen, and for some
Sure.
reason, it doesn't help me to be out. It helps me to be
Mhm.
in, and I usually put on some music, and I usually have. There's the same. There's just something on Spotify that I listen to. It's all this like movie music, mostly instrumental,
Okay.
and I listen to the same thing over and over again, but I do that when I edit, and I don't know why. It's just something that works for me.
Sure. Your writing style, I describe it as cinematic. I think you and TJ Newman are some of the new authors whose styles are incredibly cinematic. You can visualize these scenes happening. They're incredibly thrilling. Are you inspired by film at all?
Absolutely. I'm a screenwriter too. So for me, I think, and I should say, I think in terms of books, but I really don't. I think in terms of film, and I don't think
Okay.
that that's unique to me. I think a lot of other authors do it, but it is cinematic.
Mhm.
When I see a story playing out, I see it playing out as a series. And one of my all-time favorites on Netflix is the Narcos series. So you have
Oh
Narcos, you
yeah.
have Narcos Mexico, and recently I got into Fauda, which is an Israeli
Is
show.
that
That's yeah.
is Narcos Sheridan?
Narcos isn't Sheridan. He did
No,
Sicario,
that's right.
but the Narcos is totally different. And
Gotcha.
and so anyhow, but I love that multiple storylines playing out as the viewer can watch them.
Hmm.
And I like to just have people. That's what I like to do in my books. I like it to be very visual, something you can feel.
Yeah.
But I like it multiple things playing out at one time. And I always tell people that I write multiple points of view, and my goal has always been to make each point of view equally interesting as the other point of view. Meaning, a lot of times we might read about a protagonist, then we'll get into another storyline, a B plot or something. You're kind of like, let me just kind of skim through this so I can get back to what I like. So I
Yeah.
work really hard to make every storyline equally as interesting as the other one or as the protagonist. And I found that to be the case with a lot of series that we watch now. Everybody's watching, whether it's, Game of Thrones or whatever it is,
Right.
name any famous one. You've got these multiple storylines playing out. So no, I do see it in a very cinematic way. And I write it, scene by scene, kind of like I would write it in a series.
Sure. Getting into the weeds of the book itself. Tell me about your challenges. I mean, you're 3 books in, and now 4 and almost 5 for you. So I'm sure you've hit some kind of rhythm. But what are some of the challenges you face? I mean, as you progress through this series, and how do you overcome them?
So the challenge, I think, when I initially took this on, I thought, well, okay, I'm writing about the Texas Panhandle. I thought, well, eventually I'll run out of ideas. But what you learn is the more you write and the more these characters grow, the more storylines and sort of B plots that are becoming more that sort of end up taking more center stage than you thought they would. So I went from a place of how am I gonna do this to, oh, I've got this story, but I'm going to kick it to the next book, and I'll kick that to the next book. And I'm like, oh yeah, I really want to do this, but I'll do that 3 books from now.
Sure.
And so the challenge is, I think, sort of giving readers what they want, if you know what I mean, where the story could go several different ways, but trying to really figure out what people are interested in, what people really want to see play out next, because you can only do so many things.
Right.
And so just that, I think that's a challenge, is just finding what's the most next interesting or pressing thing to put in a book. So that's kind of what I'm going through now. I'm kind of weighing two different, for books 5 and 6, I could do 2 different things. One would make more sense in terms of the structure of the storyline, as the series plays out. But one, it seems to be more pressing in terms of world events and what's happening. So I don't know. I guess we'll see what happens when I start writing.
As I'm, a few hundred pages into Ricochet, I see a lot of themes of fatherhood and new family. What's the message that you wanted readers to take from this new book?
One of the things, when I set out to do this, I really did a lot of research, and I'd go to the library and I'd literally get piles of books, and I'd have them on my bedstand, and I would start reading. And there were a lot of good writers, a lot of good stories. The writing was great, but one thing that I if I had to have a criticism of some of them, was that I didn't care that much. I would read 100, 150 pages in a book, and I go, okay, I see what they've done here. This is neat. And then I'd put it aside, and then I'd take it back to the library. And the problem, I thought, was, so I set out to write a character-driven thriller novel. So just as equally as you would get invested in the characters in maybe a literary novel, which Lonesome Dove is my all-time favorite novel, and I guess you could call it a Western or literary. I don't even know what it's classified as. And I've had a lot of people say, like, oh, I don't like Westerns. I was like, man, it's so much more than a Western. It's about these people's lives and all these decisions and what you could have had, and love and lost, and decisions that haunt you for the rest of your life. And so I wanted, kind of what McMurtry did for Lonesome Dove, I wanted to do the same for a thriller. I wanted to have stories about fatherhood, and not just, Garrett with his relationship with his adopted son, but with his own dad and with his brother, and all these fallout that they've had over the years, and things that have happened in their past that have really plagued them as a family, and how do they overcome these, and getting back to things like love of the land. And for me, I know not everybody has a big cattle ranch, but everybody can, I think, everybody is invested in something, and maybe it's something from their past, or maybe it's a hometown or a state or a place. There's something that people love and want to go back to, and this is Garrett with the ranch. And so I wanted to infuse other things beyond the big story of, who's going to get blown up or killed or whatever. I wanted other storylines that were more matters of the heart, to really pull readers in and want to grow with that family.
Sure. And I really appreciate your time today, Taylor. One last question before I let you go. It's always this one. I'm sure this has already happened to you. But you're going to be at a book signing event or a book conference, and somebody's going to have a well-worn copy of one of these. And they're going to say, Taylor Moore, you are my favorite author, and I want to be a writer. What's the biggest piece of advice you would give me? So Taylor Moore, what is that number one piece of advice for the new and aspiring author?
I guess there's a lot of advice you can give, but there's one that I give that maybe is a bit unique to what you hear. I always tell people, start and finish writing a book. If you really want to be a published author, and I don't care if it's an indie author, if it's be with a big publishing house, if you say, I want to be a writer, start and finish a novel. And I know that sounds funny, but so many people start books and never finish them. And really finishing them is where the rubber meets the road, if I'm being honest, because we can all just start anything. But making it all come together and tie together, that's where it's really hard, because every book that I write all this calamity, I write all this like intrigue and all these things. And then I get to, 3/4 through and I go, oh no, now I've got to like bring it all together. What did I do? That's the hard part. Now, I also tell people this. I said, if writing is just, if it's catharsis, if it's a hobby, if it's just fun, you just like, this is your release, start and never finish a million books. Because if this is just what you do, just for fun and you just want to start a new story, then do it. There's nothing in the world wrong with that. But if you want to be a published author, start and finish a book. That book may be garbage. You may at the end be like, this is the worst book that's ever been written. I don't care. Start and finish it, and then start another one. But get to that end. Get to where it says the end at the end. That there's something about that that's very rewarding, and it's something that mentally will tell you you can do this, that you have started and finished something. So that's the advice I'd give to anyone who wants to do this.
Man, Taylor, like I said, I appreciate your time. I appreciate your insights. Where can our readers find, or where can our viewers find you? Where can they find Ricochet or the rest of the Garrett Kohl books?
So TaylorMooreBooks.com. I always direct people to my website. If you want to know more about me, more about the books, more about anything, or to find me on social media, go to TaylorMooreBooks.com. Books are sold everywhere pretty much anywhere you can buy books. So burrowing out, we always say here, if you're in Amarillo, buy local. Barnes & Noble, Amazon, Walmart, local Walmarts they're in now. And so you name it, they're around. So just it won't be too hard.
I think it was Deep Back. No, it was Downrange. I saw at the Book People in the Austin airport.
Okay, yeah. So that's been the fun thing. Always people ask me, what kind of books do you want to write? And I said, I want to write airport books. And so it's been fun to see my books. People send me pictures from all over the country.
That's so cool.
With my books there, and it's fun because that's what I always wanted to do.
Taylor, again, thank you. I appreciate your time today. We'll see you again soon.
Andrew. Thanks,
Maybe
Andrew.
at that Starbucks up the road, right?
There you go. Yeah, we'll see you there.
That's our interview for today. Thank you for tuning in, and remember to subscribe for more insights and wisdom for your writing journey at the Indie Author Method. Find us online at my website, www.andrewjbrandt.com.
That don't make it better.